Actually Road to Net Zero 2070 with climate action and other issues. This is 2070. India has decided to become net zero. So there are lots of activities going on. So on that we have invited Dr. J Patar. Pranab is an actually award-winning environment and sustainability expert with over 25 years of association with the non-profit environment sector, working on issues like climate action, water security, nature-based solutions, water resources, livelihood, climate change impact on differently able people and marginalized communities, sustainable tourism issues. These are very to name a few. He has a lot of other, where he is getting involved. And he is currently worked as a consulting expert for multiple national and bilateral organizations, including GIZ India. Prior to this, he was serving as a CEO of an Indo-American environmental and social impact organization called Global Foundation GFAEHW, based in Delhi. And the organization is known for its effort toward bringing in enduring solutions to major social environmental issues, passionate about developing environmental capacity among youths. He has so far trained and directly engaged with over 15,000 enthusiasts, students, educators, and corporate volunteers on critical environmental issues across India. He's a member of Climate Reality Leadership Corporation, USA. Uh, he sits on several prestigious national forum and a number of national international bodies and government-appointed committees, such as IUCN, Special Survival Commission, Indian Tourism and Hospitality Congress, IUCN Tourism and Protected Area Specialist Group, and Coalition Wild Global Mentorship Program, and Responsible Tourism Society of India. He is presently serving as the secretary of the TERI Alumni Association, an official forum of the Energy and Resource Institute that engages with its former employees and associates. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Potter. This is the brief introduction about you and for everybody's for participants information that for future references. For future references, we'll be recording this entire session. So thank you very much. The floor is over to Dr. Potter. Please.
Thank you, Montada. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor to get an invitation to share my thoughts on Climate Talk Forum. Uh, I don't think I consider myself as an expert, but someone who's been pursuing this subject for a long time and trying to bring in solutions, promote and propagate solutions at different levels, especially at the grassroots, working with communities and young people, trying to expedite what can be done to mitigate
পাঠার তুমি মিউট হয়ে যানি
mitigate the problems that we are facing at this moment, the planet is facing rather. So as Antada has rightly mentioned, that we are going to talk about something very, very relevant and topical issue today, including net zero and our efforts towards climate action. And what I'll do is I have a presentation. It's a slightly longer presentation, but I'll try and skip few slides wherever it's possible, so that I don't eat up the time. Rather, I consider this as a conversation, and so we will talk. And I would also like to hear, there are many experts in this forum today, people who have similar interest and pursuing this subject. So I understand this is going to be a mutually learning platform for all of us. So what I would do is I'll let me just share the presentation that I have prepared for today, and then we take it from there. S- uh, Sometimes Google Meet doesn't really work with presentations. I just hope it works today, because the moment you put it on presentation mode, sometimes it doesn't move from one slide to another.
Yeah,
And
it sometimes happens, yeah.
yeah, so I let me just move, check if it is moving, and let me know if you can see the next slide. Can you see the next slide, or it is still?
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Right now we are, yes,
You can see it.
yeah, yeah. Please go to the next slide. Just let's
Yeah,
check.
I have already switched to the next slide, and then I'm
No,
going to the next. This is the third slide.
I think this is stuck up here.
Yes, so this is what it is. So let me just,
No, 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 no. Now it is coming to the your next slide here.
okay. So what we do is, let me just
Pranab,
stick.
but can you do it in a full slide?
Sorry, come again. I didn't hear. I think
Yeah,
if I put it on presentation mode, it doesn't work. That's what I was trying to
you just
explain.
Oh,
enlarge it by some more. Actually, enlarge it, and then we can see it the way it is. You just enlarge the size actually. Basically.
I don't know. It is already
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That part. You just
100%.
yeah, 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 yeah. Maybe.
I think we'll have to go like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of putting it on slideshow mode, I'll just stick to this only, this mode only. I hope you can read the slide. Is it
yeah,
visible?
yeah, yeah. Yes, 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 yes. If it's font is a bit bigger, then we can read. Otherwise, we'll listen to you. No issue.
Okay, so I don't know if there's another way of getting it sorted. This is something I often face with Google Meet. It doesn't happen with Zoom, but Google Meet,
Okay.
it's a challenge sometimes. I think I'll just stick to this only. I'm so sorry. Apologies for the inconvenience
No,
caused.
yeah, yeah.
1 second. Okay, right. So, good evening, everyone. Hello once
Good
again.
evening. Yeah,
And
hello.
so, let us now quickly go through some of the slides that I have prepared for this talk today. I would like to highlight a few pictures that I would really like you to see and observe, and just to give you a background, why are we even talking about this issue today and in this forum. There are a few slides here, photographs here. I don't know how many of them are visible. This is really difficult. Sorry. So, if you look at this slide and these photographs, and there are most issues that's something you can very easily, I mean, they are relatable to most of you, I'm sure, whether it is the forest fire, the waste issue, the drying water bodies, urbanization, the air pollution issues, issues of forest fire, issues of cyclone and flood and crop failure and deforestation, so on and so forth. There are so many issues these days, and most of these issues, if you look at it carefully, they are indicating something, and they are taking us to be- believe that something is amiss in our environment, something is wrong in the planet Earth, and I'm trying to refer to a very different kind of change that we are experiencing at this moment. Although human beings normally very fond of change, as they say, change is the only constant, should be the only constant in life. And but the kind of change that we are experiencing today in our environment, in our natural surroundings, especially to do with climate, something we don't we despise. We rather don't want to experience that kind of change, because this change is not bringing any good. It is only causing trouble, and trouble to the mankind, a natural environment, all the flora fauna around us. And and uh, I'm sure you by now you've gathered that I'm referring to climate change, and which is causing, whether it is extreme weather events in the form of rainfall, heat wave, which we have recently experienced this year. I mean, this year it has crossed the extremities rather in places like Delhi, and at the same time, simultaneously in other states like Assam and Bihar, they're experiencing devastating flood. At the same time, places like Maharashtra and all that experiencing drought. So all these phenomenon we are experiencing today is indicating something, and which is not a good indication. And all of them together, if we look at it, we are also seeing the trend getting changed. It is not about these changes alone. I mean, whether it is heat or rainfall or whatever, but the trend is also getting changed. I mean, in terms of the intensity, in terms of the duration of, for example, rains, and which is causing flash flood, which is disrupting our day-to-day life as well as economies. So we have not been able to, as a society, we are finding it extremely difficult. And if we look at the statistics, the current decade is has been predicted to be the warmest decade in the history. And in fact, if we look at the current trend, also last year itself was considered as one of the warmest uh, years in the record on record. And this year also, it's likely to be the warmest. In fact, breaking all the records it has set last year. So, and which is making things difficult, which is making our ecosystem more vulnerable. Like I keep referring to this very important landmark study that was undertaken by IIT Guwahati, Indian Institute of Sciences Bangalore, IIT Mandi, supported by Department of Science and Technology and the Swiss Development Corporation. So for the first time, this study revealed that Indian Himalayan region is far more vulnerable than what we have perceived earlier, particularly states of Northeast, including Assam, which has been rated as among the most vulnerable states in the country. And so obviously, for a longest time, we thought, Himalaya is, of course, for natural reason, for obvious reason, is vulnerable. But non-mountain areas also getting vulnerable today. And not just, and this vulnerability is not just confined to states which are traditionally biodiversity rich, but also states of central India, like which is considered as the hinterland, has also been highlighted by various studies, including this study, which the slide that I am showing currently. That's a slightly old study undertaken by the World Bank, which has also highlighted that by 2050, the hinterlands of India also will become highly vulnerable because of the climatic change, climatic shift, and the temperature rise. And that will cause further damage to our economy, especially uh, the natural habitat and the agriculture pattern. So, because as we all understand, the agriculture is something which is highly dependent on weather pattern, and obviously the climatic shift is causing the weather to behave in a very weird manner, very unpredictable manner, and obviously causing a lot of damage to our agriculture and the agriculture yield. Uh, then, of course, comes the issue of health. So during COVID-19, we have already experienced that, how climatic shift can also lead to pandemic-like situation. And this current heat wave that we are experiencing, especially during the month of April and May, has already recorded severe health issues among uh, people who are in the fringes, especially the vulnerable communities, communities uh, who who do not have the social security network or the kind of infrastructure support that people, uh, especially living like people like us, middle class families who can afford better homes, equipped with air conditions and all that. So people who cannot afford, so obviously this weather is bringing more devastation to them, and including deaths on many occasions due to heat wave. So obviously the situation is grim, but today I don't want to highlight on this problem part something we are all of us are aware today about our problems. I want to rather focus on uh, where we stand as far as our climate change issues are concerned, as far as the carbon emission is concerned, because carbon emission is something which is attributed as a major factor of climatic shift, climate change. So I want to highlight that part and then gradually move on to the solution part, because often every time we talk on various forums about environmental issues, people end up, especially people, the people at large, people, lay people who also has an interest and has a role to play as far as mitigating these challenges are concerned, they end up asking us only one question: what can be done as an individual? And so individual as well as collectively as a society, as a group. So would like to highlight the solution part, and also share some examples of what is being done already. uh, if we look at the trend, the carbon emission part, unfortunately, the countries with very low per capita emission rate, for example, India, uh, because of our mammoth size of the population, our cumulative uh, emission as a country is way up, whereas our we do not even stand as far as per capita emission, per carbon emission is concerned. Like our per capita emission is just about two ton per year, whereas countries like Qatar, Bahrain, Brunei, all these Middle Eastern countries, including Western countries like US, their per capita emission is extremely high, as high as 36 in Qatar, for example. And this slide is self-explanatory. You can see the figures right here. But because of our mammoth size, the sheer number of our population, we end up becoming one of the top countries as far as a national emitter is, emission is concerned. So our position is third as a country after China and US. But whereas our per capita emission is way below, we should not have even featured in this list. But unfortunately, this is the reality. Uh, and we are bearing the brunt for this. And now, of course, there are measures being put together at the national level, following what has been agreed a few years ago, following the Glasgow, the Conference of Parties of UNFCCC, the climate COP, where India has agreed to cut down and become and put ourselves on the path towards the net zero. And if we look at our national emission is concerned, obviously our national emission, the large part of contribution is coming from the fossil fuel, burning of fossil fuel, which is primarily the petroleum products. And now endeavor is to bring down that the consumption and replace it with alternative energy sources, which is the clean energy sources, which is the non-fossil fuel, whether it is the wind, solar, or even hydropower. Uh, but how do we do that? If we is it really feasible to do that? Whether it is I mean, it is always easier said than done. But uh, if we look at the dynamics, if we look at the kind of investment required for that kind of shift, it's not easy, and that is obvious. That is the reason why we have kept a target for 2070 and not prior to that. But many other countries, of course, they have endeavored to become net zero by 2030 itself. Some countries will become net zero by 2050, but since India's, of course, our energy needs are extremely high because we are on the path of the development, and also introducing alternative is not easy. It's a time consuming exercise, and obviously we need enormous amount of resources to be able to do that. So we have kept a rather lengthy target for ourselves as an easy target relatively. uh, and and many a times we wonder, the common uh, query is, the inquisitiveness is, if we don't do this, what happens? Of course, if we don't do this, things become, as I had already shared, that the kind of difficulties that we are experiencing as a society, as a country, becomes even more difficult. If we look at the global figures, if suppose, global temperature rises by about 40 degrees Celsius on an average, we will end up losing some 7 million people just from the air pollution. About 200 and 250,000 people from various diseases, which is uh, directly or indirectly contributed by the climate impact of climate change. That includes diseases like, waterborne diseases, or uh, diseases like malaria and so on and so forth. And of course, there will be famine line situation, like we have already experienced how drought and flood are impacting our agriculture productivity. So so all that impact will cumulatively cost us about roughly about 40 billion US dollar by 2030. That is the loss I'm talking about. So that is the kind of loss we are foreseeing. So obviously, to overcome that, or to avoid that rather, we are talking about these alternatives to be brought in. And in terms of GDP also, just if we just look at India alone, this red column is for India. So by 2050, if we look at the figure, so we are looking at the major GDP loss if we continue with this business as usual approach and don't do much to cut down our emission, and and bring in the alternative energy source, which is now often called as the energy transition. And I would like to also highlight, I did mention about the vulnerable communities getting impacted because of the climate change impact more than others. But if you look at the global figure, roughly about 1 billion young people, youth, are going to be impacted more because of this, and in because of the I'm talking about both direct and indirect impact here, and that is across the globe, not just in one part of the planet, but obviously more in the developing and underdeveloped countries of Africa and Asia, as well as South America. Uh, so situation to avoid this kind of situation, we are putting in so much effort globally to bring in the alternative. Like for example, if we look at the India's effort, so obviously India, like I mentioned in the Glasgow COP itself, India has agreed to adopt a five pronged strategy to bring down our emission. And if we look at our position in terms of our climate action efforts so far, we have continuously been doing putting in a lot of effort and doing really well since last few years. And currently, as we speak, we stand somewhere above on position 7 as far as our climate action efforts are concerned. Of course, first three positions, there are no countries on that position, because no country has been able to live up to that mark to be put on for second and third positions. But there are countries in fifth and sixth position, and followed by India on seventh. But surprisingly, some smaller countries like Bhutan or Suriname, they have already achieved the net zero target because of their traditional and sustainable way of living lifestyle, and the economy which is largely dependent on nature based activities, which has very little carbon footprint or carbon emission. So as a result, and more so, these countries have a very small population, so obviously the collective impact is also very little. So as I had mentioned, India has already set a target. So one of the major target that we are, which is like an immediate term target, is to become to generate about 500 gigawatt of clean energy by 2030. So that is our target. Of course, that is a very ambitious target, which also requires, like I said, a lot of investment. And in that target, the solar is primarily taking the lead, followed by wind and other sources. So I'm going to skip a few slides here. Uh, but when we say net zero, of course, net zero is something we often talk about at the national level as a national target. But we have often experienced this national target cannot be achieved if we don't do much at the federal level or local level or the state government level, because the emissions continue to happen at that level, and we will have to look at it from a very decentralized perspective here, and to be able to achieve and contribute to the larger target of 2070. And fortunately, some cities have taken the lead. In fact, some uh, states are also taking a major initiative on this, but cities are, I would say, the front runner here in bringing down their carbon emission by adopting various means. Like, for example, if we look at these 10 cities here, from Ahmedabad to Rajkot to Vadodara, Kochi, Tirunelveli, Coimbatore, Panji, Thane, Siliguri, Udaipur. So they have taken various positive measures to bring down, or rather bridge the gap. Like for example, in Ahmedabad, they have a major solid waste management plan. In fact, Delhi is not listed here. I would like to being from here, I would like to definitely highlight and acknowledge kind of efforts in Delhi is putting. For example, those who frequent Delhi would know that we have a major problem of solid waste dumping. Which there's a dumping area in Gazipur, which is between Delhi and Ghaziabad area. So that has been a bone of contention for a long time, because of the kind of pollution, primarily air pollution and water pollution, it has been contributing to, because of all the waste of Delhi getting dumped there for yes. But the government is taking a major effort to clean up the dumping site by converting it into, converting the waste to energy, and also utilized whatever little possible to, whether it is to convert them to into compost, or even some places where these dumps are being used to level the area and convert these leveled area into green spaces by using methodology such as Miyawaki. Miyawaki, of course, I'm going to show another slide later, but Miyawaki is a very, very popular Japanese methodology to grow forest in urban areas, areas where spaces where areas where space crunch is a major issue, and we do not have long time for greenery to come back. So it's as a quick fix solution. I mean, this is becoming very popular on a very, very short span. One can grow forest and dense forest. I'm talking about dense forest here. So what we normally experience in 30 years, it can be achieved in three to 4 years flat. So that kind of growth is achieved with of course, with very, very a lot of natural interventions only. I'm not talking about artificial intervention here, or neither the use of any chemical fertilizer, or etc., etc. So this is becoming very popular across various parts of the country. And in fact, we also have some successful Miyawaki forest sites in Ghaziabad. I was personally associated with those projects. So a lot of these cities are taking a positive step towards becoming net zero. In fact, Gurgaon here, Gurgaon has gained a notoriety recently for being uh, for having the highest per capita carbon emission in the country. But to counter that, the city authority, the Gurgaon Municipal Corporation has Municipal Development Authority has taken this initiative to uh, become net zero. And so I strongly feel that, other cities, some cities of course may not have a very high carbon emission rate, but it's becoming increasingly important, because for a long time these urban centers had been considered as the hub for development, epicenters of development. So obviously we see a lot of infrastructure and other growth, and obviously the loss of natural resources and ecosystems are also being witnessed in and around the urban center. So obviously they require more rapid and urgent intervention to become net zero, to become sustainable. uh, and I feel some of the towns in Assam also could probably think about going net zero at some point of time. So when we talk about these positive interventions to bring down, so there's something which is, of course, we cannot ignore, is the green cover. Uh, Green cover, when I say green cover, not necessarily the trees or forest alone, but we should also factor in and consider the importance of the aquatic ecosystems. So they combine, play a very, very strong role to mitigate the impact of climate change. Like, for example, the temperature change that we experience in the urban area cities more as compared to the rural areas, because rural area would have more greenery to absorb the heat. So cities normally experience more something in climate terminology, we call it urban heat island effect. So to mitigate all these problems, so to all these green spaces, the water bodies, lakes, ponds, wetlands, and the city forests play a vital role. And it's from our last the state of India's forest, we can see that there's a not significant, but a slight increase in our overall forest cover. But unfortunately, while few states have reported positive growth, but states in the northeastern region is showing major loss, green cover loss, and which is of course a not good sign, because northeast has been a major biodiversity hotspots and globally recognized biodiversity hotspots for its, you know, endangered flora and fauna. And so if we are losing its green cover, the forest cover, which is definitely not a good sign, and that is making the northeast more vulnerable. So climate impact is another, but if we are also losing the green cover or the forest cover, so it's becoming more vulnerable as a result. Uh, so all these problems that we are seeing today, or discussing today, I feel, if we look at it from a different perspective, I don't see, of course, it's an urgent situation, almost like a firefighting situation. And uh, uh, on a lighter note, I keep telling people that, the environmental practitioners, like people like us, we are not environmentalists, but we are firefighters, because we are uh, on a firefighting mode to save our ecosystem, our planet. But that is also creating a lot of opportunities to explore and bring in solutions, and also introduce technological interventions, innovations, like, and that Ram Emanuel, who's a very well-known American diplomat and former mayor of Chicago, who went on to become the American ambassador to Japan, he said we should never let a serious crisis go to waste. And on that note, I would like to highlight some positive aspect, how this necessity, urgent necessity uh, to become net zero or become a sustainable planet, how things are changing positively as far as economy is concerned. For example, if I look at this, we are looking at a revenue generation of over 50 billion US dollar by 2030. This is just by the industry shifting to the green phase, like that what I just mentioned about the transition. If we talk about the transition, we can expect the that the various industry to generate about 60 billion US dollar by 2030, just through the transition. And this transition, if I look at the statistics for India alone, uh, it said the green industry itself, the industry which is working for the environment and to bring in solutions to through innovations and the manage ecosystem, so on and so forth, and manage and restore ecosystems. So they can generate about 50 million jobs alone. Of course, there'll be job cuts as well, because some of the conventionally industries will disappear eventually. So there will be a certain amount of job loss as well. But we can expect, just because this transition is happening, we can and direct indirect job creation could be around 50 million by 2070, year 2070. And by 2030 alone, some 24 million jobs are globally getting created, so which is in another 6 years time from now, as per the international level labor organization report. And India is putting, as we all know, putting a lot of effort and dedicated effort. Like 4.3 billion in the last budget itself was allocated just for the transition part, to meet, of course, to meet and uh, escalate our efforts to the road to the net zero, and and meet the energy security targets. So there are positive aspects. It's not that we are only looking at the darker side. The darker side also has a brighter silver lining, as they say, and that is obviously creating some positivity for the economy, and the possibility of creating jobs, which has been a major issue of late. So now, but when we talk about all these solutions, but one thing that we will have to understand and appreciate, every problem that we are looking at or every solution that we are talking about are all interconnected. So if we just look at the efforts being put together for to meet the sustainable development goal targets, you will see, I'm going to give you a very simple example how these are interconnected. Like, for example, when we talk about one SDG, for example, climate action. So climate action, we cannot think of climate action if we don't think about conserving our aquatic ecosystem, or conserving our terrestrial ecosystem, which are two different, uh, like goal number 15 and 14, which is, there are two different set of sustainable development goals, but they're interconnected. Because one, when we say climate change, we are talking about restoring our ecosystem. We are talking about transitioning from fossil fuel to clean fuel regime. So, and each of these domain or industry represents one sustainable development goal. So they are interconnected, the goals. And so we are trying to look at things on a totality, and not, instead of looking at in isolation or silos, we are looking at totality, and in a very collective manner. And so we suppose the kind of work that I do, I just can't say that I'm only working for climate action and not contributing to other goals. So by way of looking at focusing on climate change alone, climate change adaptation and mitigation alone, I'm contributing to other cause also. Like, for example, a lot of our efforts are directed towards creating alternative life, which is directly contributing to employment generation and poverty reduction. Poverty reduction is the SDG goal number one. So so on and so forth. So this approach is becoming very important, and it is not only in scientific perspective, in spiritual terms also. I mean, like, for example, in Buddhism, there's a very beautiful concept called oneness of life and environment. So every single element is connected to its environment, or the external environment. So and so it's happening in literal terms in the physical environment also. So we experience and we see that uh, things are interconnected. And so obviously, when we devise or plan our solution, it has to uh, be considered from a holistic perspective, instead of looking at it from a individual lens. So let me now focus, give you some examples of uh, what kind of local activities that we are doing, local climate actions that we are doing, or happening in other parts of the country. Some of them, of course, I'm personally associated. Like, for example, I've already mentioned about Miyawaki. Miyawaki is a very, very beautiful, and I have personally experienced very uh, good results, extremely positive results in a very short span. Uh, and promotion of alternative is important. Uh, I have also been working in the mountain states of Himachal and Uttaranchal for some time now. And there, this picture that you see, they are from a village called Liti. It's a very, very small village in Bageshwar district of Uttarakhand, where we have been working with the community. It's a very small village, roughly about 3,000 people altogether, where we have been promoting alternative livelihood, as well as promoting traditional crops which had long been forgotten, or people have stopped growing them for various reasons. Of course, some people grow just for their own consumption. They don't grow it in a large scale because there's no market for this, or people do not necessarily know about it. So, like now, suddenly the millets have become very popular, uh, due to the mission millet program launched by government of India. Uh, but the in villages, in the mountains, people had been consuming millets for a long, long time, but they were not doing it in a large scale. They were just doing it for their own consumption. But now we are for example, sorry, these the picture in the middle. There's a very it's a different variety of an endemic variety of rajma, which is grown in parts of Uttarakhand. So we are promoting that. We are trying to promote, give them a means of and creating by creating market linkage, so that they are able to also think about making some earning from that. And of course, promotion of homestays, engaging women, engaging them, and provide them means of alternative income. And so in real sense, we are talking about empowering these people who earlier had been dependent on natural resources, which is usually gathered from their ecosystems nearby, or the mountains nearby. So to reduce that pressure, it is important that alternatives are provided to the communities who has a direct dependency on the forest ecosystem, the natural ecosystem. And also the other important part is, since the mountainous range, the ecosystem is highly vulnerable to climatic change. So if they have been able to stick to or discover some alternative means, so things will be easy for them. It will be easy for them to become more resilient towards the change. And otherwise, without having a better alternative, they will find their lives getting nowhere in the coming days and years. Uh, Similarly, the urban areas are also equally getting impacted because of climate change. One, the other part is man-made, human-made factors, including pollution, encroachment, etc., etc. And we see a lot of water bodies getting disappeared across the country, and Delhi NCR is also no different. This picture that you see, this is a pond from Ghaziabad, which was restored by our team last year, and we've been able to do it in a very swift passion. And since we were doing it, an interesting part is, although ecological restoration is considered as a technical subject, it's a scientific concept. But if trained well, communities can also contribute, and they can become the custodian of these resources, these commons, which is the common resource. So obviously, when there's a common resource, so there has to be a common responsibility, of shared responsibility of the communities to protect them, conserve them, but which is now becoming rare. People don't really take care of or protect their resources in their villages. So we are trying to break that trend, and getting communities engaged in the restoration exercise, as well as and make them custodians of their resources. So then they are responsible, and then they remain vigilant and alert to protect these resources once after they're cleaned and restored from any future encroachment or damage. Of course, there are relevance of eco-friendly technologies these days. Like, for example, this is a very popular technology, that the picture that you see, this series of pictures, the top four pictures. This was a project that we have undertaken earlier jointly with Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University in Hyderabad. So this was to using eco-friendly methods, and some plants, like for example, the plants that you see, it's a Canna indica plant, which is also commonly grown in orchards of people in Assam, which is we locally parijat. So parijat is also a plant which has the ability to absorb nutrients and pollutants from the water, and it helps purify sewage water. So this is something we were doing to clean the sewage that was generating in the JNTU campus in Hyderabad. So it's a successful model, and this is being adopted by various groups, organizations, even private companies and municipal corporations. In fact, in Delhi also there are quite a few examples of, and it is known as constructed wetland. And scientifically, it is a slightly longer name. It's called subsurface horizontal flow constructed wetland, but it works really well. It works wonder with minimal investment and minimal maintenance. One can expect to the treat the domestic sewage getting then generated in their campuses. Then comes low carbon cooking solutions like cook stove, clean cooking, energy efficient smokeless cook stove. So this is again a picture from the same village I was referring to, Liti in Uttarakhand. And then we have done a pilot, very, very small pilot in Nalbari also in Assam, where we, with the help of team from Indian Institute of Sciences in Bangalore, we have trained a bunch of master trainers and taught them how to make low carbon cook stove and chulas locally with locally available raw material. The idea was to, of course, promote these devices and technologies and to give them a skill which will help them find some livelihood. Then another successful project that I was part of, which also we received national award, water digers water award for our rainwater harvesting program. So this rainwater harvesting is primarily designed to uh, what you call, to recharge the aquifers with the help of abundant uh, boring system or tubal. Instead of storing the water, we use this boring to put the water back into the aquifers or groundwater sources, so that water level, which is now experienced by many cities like Bangalore has been a classic example where the groundwater is almost over. So the cities like that, it is an effective way to recharge their groundwater table. So there are many. This is again the picture on the right column. It is another traditional tool called watermill. Locally, it is called as gharat in Himachal Pradesh.
Pranav, sorry to interrupt. You have only 5 minutes.
Okay, so I am closing, nearly there almost. So I'll hasten up. Right. Thank you for the reminder. So there are technologies being used, promoted, and sometimes traditional methods are also being revived. For example, this water mill that I have shared here, shown here, that was primarily used for grinding grains, etc., etc. Look, in the villages, but people now no longer use this. They go to the conventional electric, the crushers, etc. For grinding their stuff. So we are trying to revive it and convert them into. This was a project, very, very small pilot project I did some time ago, to convert it for electricity production as a micro hydel kind of an approach. So similarly, for wetland conservation in Assam, of course, water hyacinth is a very popular thing, which was thanks to NetFree's effort several years ago. And water hyacinth is being, which is otherwise considered as an alien invasive species. Now people are using them as a raw materials for handicraft production, and something I have experienced here in Haryana as well, for a Ramsar site called Vindabas, which is not very far from here. It's about only 100 kilometers from where I live in Noida. So if you see this Hindi newspaper headline is Vindabas mein milenge Assam ke akarshak bag, etc., etc., handicraft items. So we, with the help of NetFees master trainers, we were able to impart this training with a group of women, and it was extremely difficult because it's a gender skewed society and the state. But women have been able to be using the training, have been able to become empowered and sell their products on their own. So there are several efforts being put together, not just at the national level or local level, but also at the community level. That's what I wanted to highlight. Like, for example, we keep hearing about nature-based solutions. So these are primarily solutions which is available in the nature itself, like conserving a lake or water body wetland also could be a effective solution to counter climate change impact and build resilience, climate resilience. So solutions are not always difficult to find or to implement. Just that uh, we should have find the right group of people or support to be able to achieve that. And of course, conducive policy discourse is important. Like, for example, the concept of OECM, which is quite popular these days, and uh, uh, which is which stands for Other Effective Area-Based Conservation Measure. Uh, it is an alternative to our protected areas like national parks and sanctuaries, but it is a more flexible kind of an approach. Fortunately, Delhi has got the first OECM site in India. It was a restoration site uh, near Gurgaon. It's called Aravali Biodiversity Park, which was developed by restoring parts of Aravali, which was getting lost. And now there are many OECM sites. OECM sites is essentially a site which can be developed and managed by people only. It doesn't require a lot of restricted management approach. And now we also see programs like Toffee, trees outside forest in India. In fact, this is also getting implemented in Assam as well. So these programs, these kind of initiatives will bring in both, will ensure both that we build our climate resilience and also some sense of employment generation. So at the last, I'm just almost done here. I just want to say that, it is very important, like Mahatma Gandhi always said, that, we need to be the change, the change that we want to see in the world. At the same time, also support other agents of change. Uh, like, for example, these days people talk about influencers, the social media influencers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, so on and so forth. But I keep telling wherever I go, every forum, that we are influencers in our own right. Even if I am able to influence one person positively, I am an influencer. I don't need to have a million follower on Instagram or social media page. So that is very important that we exercise our sphere of influence, whether it is in our immediate environment or in a societal level, or in our workplaces, or for students in their schools and colleges. So positive influence is very important, and that's what matters, because at the end of the day, no matter how much effort the government takes, we as responsible citizens of the country and exercising our right for a clean and green environment, will also have to take a step as an individual and also collectively as a society. And so I want to end here. Thank you once again, and looking forward to more interactions.
Okay, thank you, Pranab. It's very, very nice introduction, and I'm sorry to interrupt you because the time is constant, and there is right now the forum is open to all. So if anybody has any questions, so please.
This is Abhijit.
Hello.
Very nice to hear you talk, and especially to know that you're based in Noida and doing the work not just at the local level. I mean, you're doing the work at the local level, but having a national footprint. So nice to know that. So nice to also see all the work that you've been doing across the region, particularly in Delhi and in Uttarakhand, etc. My question is simple. I am not a expert in this area. My interest has been more in terms of a common man trying to understand and curious in this area. You said in one of your slides that the footprint of India per capita is one of the lowest.
Yes, that's right.
Now, obviously, the size of the country, you cannot change that. We are a big country. So, obviously, in terms of the total, it comes to be high. But let me ask you a question in terms of given the very, very low carbon footprint that each one of us are having, urban areas will be a little more, I'm sure,
Sure.
but in the rural areas, it is very low. So, then what more can we do in the sense that the duty falls on more on the actually, like you said, Qatar and Kuwait and US and all these areas who are enjoying the better, I would call, lifestyle
Right.
as per our traditional means, having energy consumption of, let's say, 10x or 20x of ours,
True.
and all those that the material world brings, and obviously the aspirations of a developing country like India would be towards that. Now, uh, and then now telling us, no, no, you need to furthermore temper your, your carbon footprint. We are already low. I mean, our carbon footprints are already low. And then how much do we temper? Because the aspirations also is there to have a better life. So how do we balance both of these? In the sense that we are still way, way down than any of these developed countries in terms of the material aspirations.
Yes. No, thank you. That's a very, very pertinent subject and issue, and often debated across forums. Uh, see, we cannot, and no one can tell us if that we carve our aspirations, that we, and then no one can tell us that we don't grow, that because just because there's climate change. But there are two things happening here. One, if we look at the real impact of climate change at the ground level, whether it is in terms of the disaster that we are experiencing, the extreme weather conditions, low productivity, agricultural productivity, the disease, outbreak of disease, etc., etc. So obviously, we do not have a choice but to also uh, adopt these measures to cut down our emission, because we are in a difficult situation, let alone uh, uh, issues of growth, etc., or retarded growth. But primary thing is that we and our people, or the country is experiencing, and if we don't factor in the transition which I emphasized during the presentation, the transition from fossil energy, conventional energy source, to the green energy sources, we will end up losing more money in the coming years, because we will have to, in any case, uh, introduce technologies which is going to be highly expensive. Because, for example, like if we continue, suppose we want to continue on coal today, the extraction, first of all, we should also understand the extraction of coal, the processing, etc., whether it is coal or any other petroleum product. It's extremely time consuming, difficult, and resource uh, 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 they're fuel guzzlers, right? So we need also fuel to process and produce these source of energy, whether it is petroleum or diesel or whatever. So that is one part. The second part, so we are, as a powerful voice today in the climate, uh, the climate debate or the fight. We, as a very, very strong force, we are putting in enormous amount, or trying to mobilize countries like us to put in an enormous amount of effort to countries who had been the conventional polluter, per se, the traditional polluters who have now attained the developed stage, whether it is the countries of the Middle East or in the Western world, to contribute money through a pool of resources called green. There are other mechanism also. The most popular and is a green climate fund. So it's a global fund where it is the countries are being forced, or rather, we are trying to convince and negotiate with the rich countries or developed countries to contribute fund for the transition that we are talking about here. For example, all the technological innovations, interventions, and an investment required for in India from to shift from fossil fuel to the clean energy. We don't have that kind of resources at our disposal. So from where that money going to come from? The money is going to come from sources like ZCF, which is the Green Climate Fund, and that is being primarily contributed by the developed countries. So these two things are happening simultaneously. Of course, we can, in a way, we are making them pay in a way directly. Of course, they are resistant. They don't want to do it. But we are also, India is not uh, unlike our old days. India is a tough negotiator now. So, and there are other countries who are with us by our side in this negotiation. So that is one. Other thing, as I said, if we don't do this, we will have severe repercussions, environmental repercussions. So obviously, we'll have to adopt these mitigation measures and a shift and make this shift. So I hope that answer your query. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, good that you pointed. I'm sorry. Satan, just one more question. Sorry.
Okay,
Just
okay,
a
okay,
follow-up
okay.
question. I know other people also like to come in. Just a quick question on the same thing. So my question is, good that you've mentioned that. My question is, activists like you, can you, when since you're also dealing with at the national level and at the international level, is it possible that I'm just taking a measure. Let's say a person in the developed world is, let's say, 50x in terms of carbon emission,
Right,
50x,
right,
and let's say India we are 5x.
right.
Okay? Now, so we are way down, right? So we are
Yes,
emitting per capita much low, which
exactly.
means, is it possible? You said something on the climate fund, but in a more vigorous manner, can we be subsidized? I mean to say, the people in India, particularly the poor and the vulnerable, be subsidized in terms of what you're saying, doing this transition towards alternative livelihoods, towards adopting, which is climate, all those elements that we need to do into. So is that can be a force to have climate finance or money moving in for, because why? Because these people are doing much less damage and therefore in some sense contributing to the world. So since they're doing less damage, we acknowledge that. We
Yes,
means the developed nations acknowledge that and
right.
fund us, fund the people. So is it possible to, I mean, this is something that as a developing nation we need to pressurize. And then only then this transition will occur. Otherwise, vulnerable peoples whose incomes are low, and then you're taking them to a more riskier profession. I know what you're saying about these net fees, all those new things that you're talking about, but they are a little risky. No, the sort of risk has to be borne not by the people, but borne by someone else. For the transition period, for the livelihood to transit into a new realm, someone has to bear the risk, and that risk can come from the risk fund which these people give. Only then the transition will occur. Otherwise, it will be difficult because the risk has to be borne by the people, the vulnerable people. Then they will lose out again and again. So that's the reason. That's my worry. So that's the only question. My question is, people like you need to really put up a pressure on the developed world to change this, what I call financial architecture.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely. It's a very, very valid observation and question you've raised. In fact, as far as subsidy is concerned, in a way, we have been able to negotiate a subsidy, if I can call it at all, call it a subsidy. Uh, uh, like most of the countries, developed countries and developing countries, would be net zero by 2030, between 2030 and 2050. But we have negotiated really hard and we said we will become net zero only by 2070. So that is another leniency that we have been able to win internationally in the international forum. Although a lot of countries didn't like it, that India has got this extra time to become. But for that very argument that you have raised, that we have a very low per capita carbon emission rate, and we have a long way to go as a country as far as our own development is concerned. We have negotiated this deal and getting this extra time, more than 25 years, for as compared to most developed countries, because most of the countries will be net zero by 2030, 2040, even before 2050. And but we have received this extra time so that we are able to complete our transition without disrupting our growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, please? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, one thing I have to ask from is basically regarding this is while this all this tensions going on, in this sense, actually what we can do regarding in the context of Assam, what we have not seen so much of activity apart from this this what is the plantation recently been started. So apart from that, we have not seen mass of the activities, in on any SDGs that is very noticeable. So, what is your observation on that?
uh See, as far as schemes are concerned, the same schemes which is getting implemented in other parts of the country, and schemes, national schemes, are also rightly applicable to Assam as well. Just that the state government, the federal government needs to prioritize, and a few, of course, apart from the plantation part, I see there's a movement around promotion of electric mobility, so which is definitely a positive step towards this direction, because mobility plays a major factor, because it's also another contributor to emission, because the conventional vehicles, most vehicles depend on petrol and diesel. So by bringing this alternative, so obviously we are walking that towards that path of net zero. The other thing that I strongly feel is where, in fact, it could be a win-win in terms of creating livelihood and employment as well, is promotion of the restoration. I did mention about the restoration activities, the activities that we are doing, whether it is the Miyawaki forest restoration of forest areas or restoration of water bodies. And Assam also have been experiencing of late, we see a deterioration of natural ecosystem on various occasions. There are a lot of examples there. So this could be a good uh, beginning for us to walk that path of becoming a sustainable state, and restore our what is it called, lost glory as a biodiversity hotspot. So something it can be easily done by restoration. Like for example, we have a classic example in the work of Sri Jadab Payengji, right? Molaida. আমাৰ সকলোৰে মৰমৰ মলাইদা. So we need to emulate and replicate that kind of model wherever it's possible. Unfortunately, um, I just spoke to him yesterday because 14 of his trees, I mean, from his forest, Molai forest, has
Yes,
been
yes,
cut by miscreants and poachers just 2 days ago.
yes,
So we'll have to be more vigilant. Of course, we need to create more such Molai forests in the state. At the same time, we'll have to be also vigilant and prevent such incidents, mishaps, where people are just coming and cutting away trees, right? And so, restoration could be a major money spinner for because one, if we also treat, because now that uh, to an extent, felling is allowed if a certain species now are being excluded, they are no longer restricted. You can cut your trees once they are mature. So that could be a economic boon, both for the state as well as the owner. The second, by creating forest, restoring forest, we are capturing carbon, because tree is the natural component which can capture atmospheric carbon dioxide. Because of course there are technologies available, especially in the Europe, where of course on an experimental basis they are trying to capture atmospheric uh, uh, carbon dioxide and store it under the ground. But it's a time consuming and expensive proposition. For a state like in Assam, or country like India, the restoration of forest land or plantation is a viable option, and we must promote it, and we must do it in a large scale. Like, instead of just doing or planting one sapling here and one sapling there, we'll have to take up um, um, uh, projects like what Jadab Payangji has been able to do. And this is possible, and something he has himself proved it. It's possible by a single individual. Then if we come together collectively, and then the restoration also requires technical experts. So that is an opportunity of green skill development opportunity. So if we train people, create a army of restoration experts in Assam, so that would give them employment. Because if we take up more such restoration projects, whether it is water body restoration or forest restoration, so they can be engaged and employed. Like, I can give you an example. There are a lot of private agencies these days. Apart from us, we, of course, we work on a non-profit basis, because I my model of working is different. But in the environment sector today, there are plenty of for-profit companies working and doing making money. And many of these restoration projects that we have in Delhi NCR today are done by private companies. We are also doing it, they are also doing it. They are doing it to make money, we are doing it to as a service, right? We just mobilize resources of raise funds just for the project, or to cover the expenses of the people associated, or to give them honorarium or salary, whatever. But there are companies, they are also doing it as a business. Restoration is a business today. So and localize. I like, for example, these Totos, the battery operated rickshaw today, they are getting manufactured here, and they can be manufactured. It is not rocket science. It's a very basic technology. It can be done locally also in Assam. So there are industrial growth potential locally as well. Yeah, thank you. I hope that answers your question.
yeah, yeah. So thank you. Anybody has any more questions? Rahul?
No, Satan, this is a very enlightening talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe not now.
Okay, thank you. I think Dr. Safia.
No question.
Okay, thank you. I think we are just on time. It's one and half hours. Quite very insightful, yeah. Very good. Insightful discussions, and thanks to listening from Pranav. It's really will be again uh, invite you for another kind of thing. Maybe the offline session will be we are planning, and you say rightly say the be the change yourself. That is very important. As an individual, there are 40 crore people, maybe 4 crores of Assam, so we can do lots of changes. So that is very important. Because we everybody need to be the ambassador. Everybody need to be the stakeholder. It is not that some people will do the work and rest will just pushing the responsibility to others. So we all are stakeholders. We all are need to create the awareness, and then we need to do the advocacy for to make this planet very to keep this planet very beautiful, and then we need to go for the action. So with this note, I would like to thank you very all participants, and special thanks to our panel, Dr. Patar. So uh, this is the end of the Climate Talk 14. So thank you very much and good night.
Pleasure is
And
all mine. Thank you, and it
okay,
was indeed an honor
yeah,
to have come and shared my thoughts here. Thank you once again. Thank you.
okay. Thank you. Good night. Namaskar. Over.
Right.